But yeah, but a lot of the work, like it's, I just you get a lot of atlases and
Mm-hmm.
just try to read up on, you know, like find out what countries are, see why, um, how the migratory patterns, especially of African people, and see how where they came from, where they went, and then but they always come up with this bullshit about they being the ubiquitous they that run and control everything. But they're always talking about like, well, yeah, the Aborigines are all into themselves, like they've never been to Africa, but that's bullshit. You saying you can't get a boat and basically just like sail, or if you sail along the shore, even in the Egyptians circumnavigated Africa with in papyrus reed boats.
Right.
So he's trying to tell me that these people didn't have the know-how to. I mean, I wouldn't say like going the direct route, which is into the open, the Indian Ocean, and probably getting capsized. But yeah, you could make it like if you just stick to the coast.
And it's those histories that like, oh, because we don't know about it, then there's no way it happened.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. But
Right.
I studied. I mean, I read a lot of Ivan Van Sertima,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Ben Jacquemin, what's the John Henry Clark, like a lot of those, lot of really great black historians who would tell more, more of the story, and so, those definitely like super inspired to work a lot.
I was. This is what I was saying earlier about race in your work. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what I admire is that you talk about, I guess the migration of Africans, of Black folks,
Mm-hmm.
but then you can even use the entire like global story of movement and travel
Right.
to kind of, I don't know, undergird that story a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and like, I don't know, that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, yeah, thanks, man. I think that it's necessary, and it also helps, get a lot of people into my work that would not otherwise be into it, because I'm not saying that people feel threatened by seeing like, oh, it's all black.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh God, I can't watch this. So it's like, oh, here you go too, Derek. There you are. You representing this shit, So, I mean, that's one part of it. But I don't think that is. I mean, I could not tell the story that I'm telling without including everybody because
Right.
it's this whole, it's France and England. And my whole story is based on the supposition if France and England were never at war, what would happen? So it's a what if scenario. But prior to that, everything else is already taken place. Like historically, my story begins at the end of the English Civil War, and then that's where I take it. And
Wait, what time period is this?
so the English Civil War ended in I think 1640 or 1680. It's one of those dates. Don't quote me on that. But in the 1600s, late 1600s, mid to late 1600s. So after that, I had so there was like the Sun King was still there, Louis the 14th. Yeah, and then they actually existed, and then I just had introduce this dude who was a sugar merchant named Bertrand, who grew up in Haiti but was French, well, Saint Domingue, what it was called back then, and then he just started like he had this pretty much a slave army called the Sugarcane Army, which he used to go back to Europe and fight, help the kings that were fighting. Helped them win the war, to turn the tide of the war. And then over time, since he had all his sugar money, which actually controlled the world at the time, gold and all that stuff, but mostly people just wanted sweets. So for the most part, he just took over the world through a sugar empire with a bunch of, servants who knew how to fight.
So he becomes like a global magnate of sugar,
Right, yeah.
with his own militia force.
Right, with his own militia. So he creates this empire, the Franglish Empire, because England wants the sweets, everybody wants his sugar. He has a lock on the sugar market. So then a couple other people go to war with him, the Dutch, because they, historically the Dutch have always controlled the seas and controlled commercial shipping. So in order for him to consolidate it, he had to have a powerful navy, so he got England involved. So France and England combine, and then they go and take everybody else out.
How do the Americas come into it?
They don't.
Oh.
Yeah, the Americans, like, even though I'm doing this map of America, America doesn't exist. I mean, it doesn't exist as a country, but the landmass exists.
Yeah, because you do have like
Also, how
native
does it factor
people.
in?
Yeah, how do they?
Well, it's basically like in my story, I would think that the Iroquois Confederacy would have actually evolved into a had it not been destroyed by the encroaching settlers. I think that it would have survived because it was very tight ship.
And would have become maybe like a
Its own government, like
Right.
Local, indigenous government, and then there was all sorts of. There was the Seminoles, even though they were basically fighting a lengthy war. And the term Seminole is a corruption of the Spanish Cimarron, which means runaway. So it was like a bunch of different people, like Choctaw.
how do you spell Cimarron?
Cimarron, Cimarron. I think it's an accent on the last O.
That's not how Conan spelled. Conan was a Cimmerian.
Oh, Sumerian.
Sumerian?
Yeah, he was a Sumerian.
But he spelled it with a C.
Yeah, it was Cimereri.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, he could have got it from the same source.
Yeah.
Because it's just but Seminole is a corruption of Cimarron, which
Okay.
is runaway. But then Louisiana is like a capital. But then I have like the Choctaw take over Louisiana. The Spanish colonial government in Mexico helps, certain natives fight against. It's the same thing. It's the same thing that happens, except there's not enough settlers here to break off and start their own country. So,
Right.
America, it just doesn't exist. The country doesn't exist.
And so when you're working on this stuff, do you have a like our history ends, in our present?
Right.
Like how, or are you just still working it through? Like, do you have an endpoint for some of this?
Oh yeah, the end point is 1880. The year 1880.
That's real specific.
Yeah.
Why?
Because in 1880, when I first started out, since his
That also seems like it could limit your body of work.
it's so many stories, because since it's a worldwide narrative,
Okay.
I could
True.
spend 1 year, I could spend 1 week in many different places on Earth, which would comprise enough work that I couldn't even make it in my lifetime.
Right. That's right.
Like all these little wars, little conflicts, little love affairs, little dramas, little intrigues, all that. I could do it, I got way more than enough time. Actually, I got to go all the way back to the beginning of the story, because I started this, where I am now, I started this from 1740, so I still got a whole another 100 years before that.
Oh, wow.
And then now I'm going into what would be the Napoleonic French Revolutionary era. So there's a lot of stories in that. But the reason why I ended in 1880 is because that was around the time where, in real history, where the Portuguese abolished slavery finally.
Ah,
in
okay.
Spanish.
Okay.
So then, the sugarcane army wouldn't be so relevant,
Right.
because of slavery in most of the sugar producing regions, and then also they had the technology with the sugar beet had been perfected, so you didn't really need, it would be costly to, so I wouldn't be able to really talk about the Caribbean in the way that I talk about it now, because it would pretty much just be, free people,
Right.
so it wouldn't be this conflict, that fuels this. Well,
I think I get it. In real history, like 1880 was this point where slavery was abolished.
Yeah.
So then the sort of
the Industrial Revolution kind
Right.
of starts, and
but see that's kind of my next question. Do you start to deal with like technology in any way? Because
with the exception of the invention of the hot comb and the permanent, no, no, and that's why
because it seems like changing history would affect how
technology, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's not much technological advancement in this story,
Okay.
because they pretty much. I mean, there's technological advancements in terms of warfare,
Right.
but for the most part, I like to keep the life simple.
Okay.
You know, so yeah, it's not a whole lot of. I pretty much put everybody back in the Dark Ages because after this emperor, I have another emperor who's just pretty. I mean, well, this emperor he's pretty bad, and the last emperor was pretty bad. But the next one, after the one that I'm working on now, he's more like a person of the sciences. So yeah, eventually it will
Okay.
Get to some place that people the technology will advance at some point. And then that's when I have England break off from France and become their own two countries. They elect the first black emperor, this dude named Nancy. And then, but nobody gives him any. Nobody even comes to his coronation. So he just quits and he goes back to Haiti, and then he leads this expedition up into the Arctic, and he just dies there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but the first black emperor, I came up with that story. That was how it started off. I started off the story talking about Nancy, Emperor Nancy, and how nobody came to his celebration. But then I went back because that's the end of the story, so I had to go back and show people how that came to be. And that was pre-Obama. That was 2007. When did Obama get elected? It was 2006.
Yeah. 08? 08?
08. Yeah, it was 08. Yeah, that was 2006, the Emperor Nancy. But, wait, where's Houston? Wow. It's right there. So you're showing Beaumont, the Sabine River.
Yeah.
Is that a pretty big river?
I don't know. Sabine River?